landslide victory by a 66% margin. He was subsequently re-elected in the October 6, 2011 provincial election and won re-election for a third term in office in the June 12, 2014 provincial election. Most recently, on June 7, 2018, Steve was re-elected as MPP for the newly named riding of Leeds, Grenville, Thousand Islands, and Rideau Lakes. Steve gained attention across Canada in 1982 when, at the age of 22, just out of university, he was elected mayor of the city of Brockville. This gained him the title of youngest mayor of Canada and a notation in the who's who of Canada. Steve served 3 terms as mayor, and during his tenure was also president of the Association of Municipalities of Ontario. Steve also worked in the media and internet development for 14 years with the Brockville Recorder and Times newspaper and RipNet. Following this, Steve served as executive assistant for the highly respected, long-serving Leeds Grenville MPP Bob Runciman. Prior to his election as Leeds Grenville MPP, Steve was the CAO, Chief Administrative Officer, for the Township of Leeds and Thousand Islands. Steve believes in being a strong leader in his community. He was a founding chairman of the 2007 Leeds Grenville International Plowing Match and County Festival. A proponent of education and physical fitness, Steve has helped raise $1.3 million for the Thousand Islands Secondary School track facility, one of the largest fundraising accomplishments for a public educational institution to date in this region. This state-of-the-art facility now attracts thousands of athletes to the community each year and played host to this year's OFSA championships. Steve also boasts over a quarter of a century of community volunteerism. Some of the many groups and committees he has served are at St. Lawrence Lodge, the Brockville Braves Hockey Club, the Brockville and Area YMCA, and he is also the past president of the Rotary Club of Thousand Islands, a position from which he had to retire when he was elected MPP. Steve is married to Deanna. Together, they are proud parents of a blended family of 5, Mitchell, Caitlin, Jordan, Alex, and Megan, and grandparents of Georgie, Mila, Eli, and Rowan. Please welcome Steve Clark, MPP Steve Clark.
Thanks, Jeanette. That's a wonderful introduction. I just I saw some Instagram photos of my grandson Eli out in Edmonton with my son Mitch on the backyard rink. So last time I saw those kids from Edmonton was last Christmas, a year ago at Christmas time. So COVID-19 sure changed our relationships with our family, and they've sure changed relationships with organizations like the Brockville and District Chamber. So thanks for giving me this opportunity. And Pam, you're absolutely right. So normally it doesn't matter whether Steve, myself, picks the Steve Clark date to be in January, February, or March. Normally when we did the in-person meeting, we had one of 3 things. We either had an ice storm, we normally had a snowstorm, so I guess we've got one of the 3. So today was pretty chilly at -20 when I was turning on the car to come to the Constitut office to access the better Wi-Fi that I have here at the Constitut office, as opposed to Deanna and I fighting over the Wi-Fi at our house. She's getting ready to publish her Leeds and Grenville business newsletter. Normally it's published on Tuesdays, so she recommended that I not steal some of her Wi-Fi this morning and come and do it from my boardroom at the Constitut office. So I did have to go out, but it certainly was better weather than we normally have for the Brockville and District Chamber update. So thanks for giving me this chance. As both the Minister of Municipal Affairs and Housing for the province and as the MPP for Leeds, Grenville, Thousand Islands, and Rideau Lakes, I know I'm always concerned about the impacts of decisions that we make as a government, both for ratepayers, taxpayers, and for businesses. And I want to, first of all, thank the Brockville and District Chamber for being such an unwavering advocate for our business community. You certainly represent your members in an exemplary fashion. And really COVID-19 has made us change our relationships in terms of how we interact. And, I said to Pam and Jan just before we let everybody into the Zoom call that, one of the best calls early on that I remember having was when I had Prab Sarkaria, our Minister of Small Business and Red Tape Reduction, on a Zoom call with both the Brockville Chamber and also the GAN Thousand Islands Chamber. And I'm speaking to them at a similar format that we're doing today next week. COVID-19 has really forced what I guess I would call an ever-revolving response from the government and quite frankly from governments worldwide. In our case, we've listened to the recommendations of our health experts, and we've made, I can argue, both popular and unpopular decisions as a result, closing and reopening schools and businesses that were recommended by the public health measures table and our chief medical officer of health. And I want to commend the efforts of local businesses, of all the measures that you've taken to ensure that your customers have been and also will be protected when your store is open under whatever terms. If the local numbers continue on the favorable trend that we've seen, I and others will be pressing the experts to return to a more regionally based color-coded system that we were involved in before the lockdown started. And I guess I just want to talk about the lockdown. I haven't seen anything from your organization, but there's been a bit of confusion out there when the lockdown was extended. I saw different reports quoting both in the media and on social media. There were some people that were quoting a February 19th date, which was incorrect. The emergency declaration that was announced by the Premier on January 14th was to be in place for 28 days. So the cabinet can lay out a 14-day declaration and then renew it for an additional 14 days. That's where they get the 28 days, which will take us to expire on February 10th. The previous lockdown had already expired at that point. So there's nothing in place by the cabinet to extend the emergency declaration past February 10th. If we needed to do so, the House would have to reconvene, and we'd have to make a decision as a legislature. So I've seen that in a couple of reports. I saw it in one media outlet in the riding over the weekend. So I wanted to update you that it's not the 19th. It is as the Premier had announced on January 14th. And I know there's some questions regarding retail, so I won't preempt that in my address. But I do want to say that I've been a fierce advocate for small business in the riding, not just during the pandemic, obviously before as well. Our government understands, and I think any of you who have watched Premier Ford at the 1 o'clock press conferences, understand that he, as someone who was in business for many years prior to our election as government in June 2018, he understands the strain that the pandemic is putting on the retail sector. But at the same time, we're trying to provide balance to our desire to open up and the need for the province to ensure that our healthcare system is able to handle the COVID-19 caseload. And I see some folks from the Brockville General on here, Marilise from the foundation, also Joan, I see Joan as well. And I'm in close contact with both Nick at the Brockville General and Frank Vasallo at the Kemptville and District Hospital. And this is a very real concern that's playing out in many other ridings that obviously have higher COVID-19 cases. And many of the decisions that the government are informed to make are based on not just the advice of the chief medical officer, but also the capacity that we're seeing in the healthcare system. And there's been tremendous strain on the system, obviously in those areas around the GTHA where there's an outbreak. The other thing I want to cover today a little bit because it's very, very important for you and your members, is the business support programs that really were informed out of Zoom calls like we had with the Chamber and with both Minister Sarkaria and also Minister Fideli, who had a significant amount of consultation. And as well, the government has just started our pre-budget consultation. So I'm going to take this as an opportunity for the Chamber to provide me with some advice on what should be in this spring's budget. I think it's very important that we continue to have a high level of engagement moving forward. In terms of the business support programs, I'm sure I see Ron Zajac. I'm honored that Ron's on the call. I talked to Michael Barrett. I'm not sure he mentioned that the media graced his chamber speech, but we're glad to have the local media here. You might have seen some of the ads that I took out over the last week or so in the Recorder and Times and other media about the business support grants. Very important that we access those programs. There's a number of one-time grants and rebates of up to $1,000 for eligible businesses for PPE. The Ontario Small Business Support Grant, which provides businesses who have had to close or significantly restrict their services when the provincial lockdown began in Boxing Day. They start at $10,000 and then move up to $20,000. I do want to tell you that I did have a chance to speak to Minister Thompson on Friday night from the Minister of Government and Consumer Services. And I got some statistics about the business support grant, the Ontario Small Business Support Grant. And I found that there has been, and this was as of Friday, so granted there might be some applications in the system, there's only been 212 applications from Leeds and Grenville. And to put that in context, Prince Edward County, there's 542 businesses that have applied. I look at the amount of business applications in the system. Predominantly, they are from the GTHA, but they certainly, because of the decision of the government in Boxing Day and then the emergency stay-at-home order that took place in early January, we still qualify for those business support programs, as we do for the property tax and energy bill rebate program and the Main Street Relief Grant, which is the PPE grant that I talked about. The other thing is those three programs, I'm surprised that the uptake has been as low as they are. The graph that I looked at on Friday night, the energy rebate program between draft and submitted applications by business, and this is now a provincial statistic I'm going to give you, 12,473 businesses have either had a draft application or a submitted application for the energy rebate program. 12,101 businesses have either had a draft application or a submitted application for PPE. And then the next one was the one I was most surprised at on its low uptake. The tax rebate program has only 7,723 applications for the province. So, I think if there's one ask that I have from the Brockville District Chamber is to work with my office to ensure that your members, regardless of some of the ads that I've put out over the last couple of weeks, that your members have the opportunity to apply. And I know that there are some businesses who have been deemed essential, so they've been able to remain open, and their funding levels aren't to where their sales levels aren't to where they have been, and I recognize that. And I think the biggest information that we can provide to the health table is those case counts. And I monitor, like you do, the case counts every day in the riding. I look at how we project our case counts today versus the additional color coding, and the map that I saw was provided to me last week shows that our riding as of last week was nestled in that green zone if we were back to the color coded system. So that would be probably about a handful, 5 or 6 businesses that 5 or 6 public health units that would be in there. But there's been, a number of changes. We made some changes on school last week. We now see 18 of 34 health units have now started again with in-class learning. So there's a lot of changes as we move to the end of the stay-at-home order. And again, some of those decisions that the health table makes are based on data and statistics that, for example, Dr. Stewart would provide at the Lanark Leeds Grenville Public Health Unit. And she and her staff have done a tremendous job in an unprecedented situation. But if there's one takeaway that I have from today's address, and I will go into questions now to hear from people that are on the Zoom call, is to work with the Chamber on ensuring that businesses understand the Business Support Grant Program. And if there's anything my office can do, we certainly are a phone call or an email away. So thanks for giving me this opportunity to give you a short update, and we can deal with either the submitted questions or other questions that people have this morning. So thanks for having me.
Wonderful. Thank you, Steve. So what we'll do is we'll get into the advanced questions first, and then if anybody on the line wants to ask a question or has a question in the chat, please feel free. There's a few of them, so let me just get started with the first one. With many new expenditures out towards private schools, which result in the necessary to hire extra staff, spend thousands of dollars in PPE and etc., is the government going to consider offering some kind of support to small businesses like private schools to help alleviate the strain on the bottom line?
Yeah, that was a great advanced question, and I have submitted that for an answer from the ministry about private schools like those that are in our riding. At first, I thought that they might qualify for the very least the PPE grant. So I'm just trying to confirm with the Ministry of Economic Development, Job Creation and Trade, and also the Ministry of Education, just what a private school would qualify under. So I will get that answer for you and submit it back to the Chamber so that you can let your members know. So when I received the question, I haven't received the answer back. But it's a great question.
Wonderful. And that would be great, Steve. So then I can put that on the website because this is being recorded, and we'll be having this put on our YouTube channel and our website for people that weren't able to participate this morning. So the next question, recognizing all the hard work small businesses have done to adapt to the health measures imposed on them, when will small business in Leeds Grenville be given the same treatment as big box stores and large corporations to allowing them to make a living? And I know that we provided a letter a few weeks ago to your office about that fair play. And I know that you have responded in some way around that. And so here's the question.
That's been submitted to Dr. Williams. So it's not something that if you talk to anybody at the health table, it's something that comes up pretty well every week. The restrictions are based solely on whether or not stores sell essential goods. So a small convenience store has the same opportunity to be open as a large grocery store or a pharmacy. And a small hardware store, can operate, under curbside, just as, it doesn't matter whether it's a small home hardware or whether it's a Home Depot. And I have to tell you, there's a number of businesses that have adapted very well. My, 2:45 the other morning, my carbon monoxide detector decided it wanted to chirp at me every 45 or 50 seconds. So realized I had to get another one. Its 10-year life was over. So, I have to tell you, I picked up the phone, ordered the new, because then you got to replace everything, right? They're all 10 years old, so they all have to be replaced. So I called Home Hardware, and drove over there, called them, picked them up. It was done in curbside. It was a couple of minutes for them to be able to sell me the product. So some businesses have really adapted well. And I think the challenge, as I said in your in the response back to you, was the definition of essential business or essential items. An essential item now, could be a toque or a pair of gloves. And that's the challenge, is the essential. We haven't created an essential item list, but we've created a situation for essential businesses. The bottom line is, based on the numbers, I hope that we move towards that color-coded system again, because in a green system, then we have more of our economy open and more opportunity for businesses to be able to see a light at the end of the tunnel in terms of those retail sales. So that's what I'm going to continue to make sure that that your letter and the letter from the GAN Thousand Islands Chamber gets presented the closer we get to February 10th.
Yeah, that would be awesome, just because, to shed a little more light on that, the fact of essentials and non-essentials. We have retails that, have winter hats and stuff like that, and they're doing curbside pickup. And I think really the ask of the chambers is more so the big box stores can do curbside pickup on those essential, non-essentials, and we go in for our groceries. So here's hoping that we will open up soon and our small businesses can get back to business. Not in the same light, but a little more extra for them to keep going. So next question, what is the estimated timing for the COVID vaccine to be distributed here through Leeds and Grenville? And I think there has been a few vaccinations long-term care, but I guess you can allude to that.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, for sure. And most people have probably heard me in the media talk about our 4 stages of vaccination distribution through our task force led by General Hillier. The public health unit here for Lanark, Leeds, and Grenville, Dr. Stewart, has modified our 4 stages. She's made it into 6 stages. So essentially, the people that are receiving the vaccine today are long-term care homes, high-risk retirement home staff, residents, designated essential caregivers. So that's the stage 1 in our riding. Stage 2 will be expanded to healthcare workers at a high risk of COVID-19 exposure. So this would be hospital staff, EMS, medical first responders, assessment center staff. Stage 3 would be healthcare workers at lower risk COVID-19 exposure. So those that can apply the public health measures, reschedule if somebody doesn't pass the screening, residents of the bigger congregate care settings like group homes or shelters or low risk retirement homes. And then stage 4, 5, and 6. 4 would be essential workers. So first responders, teachers, the food industry. Stage 5 would be the high risk population, which when we say high risk population, that would be under the Ministry of Health definition. So that would be beginning at age 70 and then cohorting from age 70 back to down. And then finally, stage 6 is essentially all other residents in Leeds and Grenville that are 16 over and would like a vaccine. So when I first talked about our vaccine task force, I talked about the critical opportunity for vaccinating those high risk people in the gray zones. That would take place from now till the end of March. Early on, it was expanded to include that group in stage 1 that our local health unit has looked at. And then from April through to the next 6 to 9 months would garner that middle chunk of people. Hopefully, again, you would go back over that time to the traditional ways of being vaccinated. You'd move from an assessment center where it would still provide the vaccines into perhaps a pharmacy or a doctor's office. And again, all of this is based on getting the vaccine. That's sort of the key opportunity. So, and it will take the better part of this year and into next year, depending on the vaccine supply.
Absolutely. Thank you, Steve. So this is kind of around the vaccination again. Once Canadians have all been vaccinated, how long do you anticipate when we would expect things like travel, retail to really return to normal?
Well, because of the federal government's announcement on Friday about non-essential travel, I think that's a very difficult. I probably had an answer before Friday. Now that Friday has come and gone, and testing will start, this week or today actually, and then if the federal governments start their testing this week, we'll work with them on the border crossings as well, since we've got 2 border crossings in the riding. I think time it will tell. I think it'll all be up to when we get the vaccine, how much of the vaccine we get, and then how we distribute it. But that's certainly as the vaccine is been given. The word from the health table is that's how you'll start to see the economy opened up. Again, my hope is after the February 10th date, we'll see a more color-coded type situation. Again, this is all up to the medical table and based on data that they've seen. But we're going to continue to work with them on ensuring that, a riding like this, that we continue all the good public health measures that we've been implementing to date. And quite frankly, the business community has done a tremendous job. The public have done a great job in this riding of ensuring that they follow the medical officer of health. At one point, as you know, early on in the pandemic, we were the highest in the province, very, very early on. And since then, we've seen a steady decline. And then, right when the first lockdowns were put in around Boxing Day, we were probably touching the orange. But over the last month, we've seen us move back from orange to yellow and now into the green, which I think is a direct result of the measures we put in as a government, but also the fact that the people are following those measures in the riding.
It's good to see. It's good to see that the numbers are kind of going down in our riding, and we'll hope and pray that on February 10th, there might be some good news for our area. With the pandemic closer that they have eroded earlier revenues, the charitable sector and childcare sector face a great deal of uncertainty. What is the plan or position to address supporting these vital organizations that support the community's well-being? With fundraising dollars expected to be lower and increased costs associated with new protocols and PPE, is there a plan to be introduced for continual funding?
Yeah, and I think Minister McLeod's done a really, really good job in meeting with the sector. Certainly, I've had the chance to talk to a number of nonprofits. It's great to see Trish on the call today, and congratulations, Trish, on United Way getting their goal. I was so pleased with that. So congratulations. And then you look at even some of the bright spots that we've had in the riding during COVID-19. Go back to Marilise and Joan. We had tremendous success in our community for the fundraising to help get our hospital expansion built on time, which again, in the middle of a pandemic, it's wonderful to see that we were able to open up a much needed new wing in the hospital that was supported by our local community. That shows the value of organizations like the Brockville General and the United Way. I've also had the chance to tour the Brockville and District YMCA. And I want to thank Rob for the great, and I know it's Eastern Ontario, but I still like to give the local guys.
It's all good. It's all good.
The local guys a plug, and I know the type of protocols that they've put in, and I think Minister McLeod is really looking at the funds that she's providing through programs like Trillium and others to see how it can best meet the sectors in a post-COVID environment. She's tried to maintain funding level to groups that are providing much needed services in the local community. But listen, I know as someone who fundraised in the charitable sector for many, many years before I was an MPP, things are tough. And you know, we really need the community to work together to help some of these organizations that are really the lifeblood of our community. You know, our community runs on a significant amount of volunteers that's been really challenged during COVID-19. Funding and donations, you know, in many cases have not kept pace. For every success story like our United Way, there are other charities that are struggling. And I think we really have to look at moving out of COVID, how we can best keep that charitable sector and that nonprofit sector moving. I know early on in my ministry, we provided a lot of money to the United Counties, so they were able to support food banks and those low-cost restaurants that are in our riding to help our most vulnerable. And I think that was key at the start of the pandemic for us to be able to provide. You know, in my case in Leeds and Grenville, it was $1.5 million that helped our most vulnerable. So it's something that I know Minister MacLeod has worked very hard on, and she's fought hard at the cabinet table for more dollars moving forward to the budget. So that might be a good budget ask from our charitable sector through me to the finance minister for the spring budget.
Steve, I appreciate that. If I could just say one thing about, you could pass on to Mr. MacLeod. If there's money going to be flowing through the Trillium Foundation, what the charitable sector like the YMCA would need is really just funding to get us through that time. Infrastructure dollars for capital doesn't necessarily help bridge the gap from the revenue piece. So I just wanted to pass that on.
Yeah, that's right. And you know, I heard it as Minister of Municipal Affairs with municipalities, right? It's that operating deficit that we needed to be able to support our towns and cities. And I think you're making a compelling case that the charitable sector is really no different.
Great. Thank you, Steve.
That's awesome. Thanks, Rob, for coming on and making that extra point. Also, Trish did in the chat box added another point to it. Just the charitable sector is raising a lot of concern on not being able to continue their support post-emergency funding that would be done by March of 2021 at the end. And is there any more support for the most vulnerable in the province? So there is a lot of concern around that for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. And we've provided to municipalities about $510 million to help on the housing file. You know, the warming center that just opened in Brockville was dollars that my ministry provided the United Counties of Leeds and Grenville. We also provided them with a final payment of about almost $300,000. I'm not sure exactly what they're using those funds for. They were fairly flexible. But I know that we want to see long-term sustainable housing solutions. So we're really challenging service managers to do a number of things, to implement the Canada-Ontario Housing Benefit, which is a portable housing benefit to help people in the private market, so to get them rapidly housed. But we've also really looked at, you know, what type of bricks and mortar can we build in 2021? And we've challenged them to do a number of things to provide, you know, more capacity within their housing system this year to be able to help organizations and agencies that help the most vulnerable, and also to implement something that I've been pushing for over the last 2 years. And you talk to homelessness advocates right across the country, and that's a by name list. That's to actually create a list of who's in your community that needs your services. And by you know, placing their name to it, you can then provide the wraparound services that that person needs themselves to be safe and secure. So, you know, we've provided the United Counties from my ministry with a record amount of dollars, and we want to see some marked improvement. So thanks to them and the local group for the warming center. You know, but you know, I'm going to keep pushing them to do more with the funds we're giving them.
Did you want to say anything, Trish, to that question a little more, or?
No, I thanks, Steve, and I agree with you. There needs to be an approach that there's a wraparound service, because you can get folks into some immediate housing, but if they don't have the other supports, they're not going to potentially long-term be successful. So I agree with you. I think that the one thing that I heard recently, and I could be wrong on this, is that those Trillium grants, although they've kind of loosened the grips on what's required, there's still only about 30% that are being approved. And so I guess that was an alarming number that I learned just before Christmas there, was a concerning number. So I didn't know if there was going to be potentially an increase in that, or just the demand is so high. I don't know.
Yeah, I think it's both, Trish. I think demand is high. I think there is an injection of extra dollars in the system. And I know that, they're a volunteer, the grant review teams are, volunteer committees. We've got a number of people from the riding on the Quinte, group that reviews it. But yeah, there is a huge need out there in the sector to have some of these grants move forward. And I'll loop back in with Minister McLeod later today. We've got a call. One of the cabinet committees is meeting, so I'll pass that along to her at the meeting this afternoon.
Thanks, Steve.
Thank you. And just to let people on the call know, there is a call with Minister McLeod on, I think Wednesday, the 3rd, and it's on our calendar event if you want to register for this area. She's doing a whole bunch of calls right across the province, and for Eastern Ontario, it is on Wednesday the 3rd. So if anybody wants to sign up, once again, it is on our calendar of events.
So Pam, I do see Nick from the Brockville General. He must have been on a different screen. I didn't see him earlier, so it's good to see Nick. Nick and I have almost a weekly touch point by phone or text or video link. So just want to again thank the hospital here and also in Kemptville for the great work that they've done. Really, above and beyond the call of duty because of COVID-19. And, again, to celebrate the fact that we were able to open our expanded hospital on time, but then also the fact that our riding has not one, but two major plant expansions to deal with PPE. The 3M expansion, with any of you have gone down California Avenue. I purposely, when I picked up those smoke and carbon monoxide detectors at Home Hardware, I made sure I drove by the expansion at 3M that both the federal and provincial governments are supporting, and then as well the expansion at Greenfield in Johnstown. The fact that our little riding has two huge PPE plants is really amazing. And I know that when the Premier talked early on in the pandemic about never being beholden to another jurisdiction, people like myself took that as a bit of a challenge, and our industrial family really answered the call. So I'm proud that both of those expansions are supported by the province, and they're going to make a real difference in distribution of hand sanitizer, grade alcohol, and N95 masks. So I think we can look at our riding as a real leader in the post COVID-19 fight.
That's awesome, and that's a really good point. So I think you've already alluded to this one last question that was given in advance. So when we come out of lockdown, will the province go back to the regional approach with keeping Ontario safe and open, as you were alluding to the color coding, where we would maybe lie, or is there going to be a new type of program, how we unlock?
Yeah, no, it's a great question, and my hope is that we go back to the green, yellow, orange, red, gray situation in terms of how we do it. There might be some nuanced changes based on our observations during the pandemic. Every time we go into lockdown, we understand better, how COVID-19 is being fought, and obviously the variant that we're seeing now, is a bit of a game changer in terms of how we deal with the health table. Has always said we'll make changes based on the data. I think there's an opportunity for us to do that.
Perfect. So if anybody does, I know that Wendy had her hand up prior to us going to, I don't know if Wendy had a question, if
I
Wendy
didn't
wanted
have
to.
a question, but I
Okay.
had a comment.
Perfect. Thank you, Wendy.
So when we're dealing with our small business folks, like the first lockdown was difficult. The second lockdown was almost defeating. So we're dealing with business owners who are really discouraged. And we're also disappointed that they're not taking more advantage of the programs that are being offered. So there's some really excellent programs. Thank you very much, Steve, for that. But I mean, there's just so much information going at them. I'm sure that they're feeling like overwhelmed. However, if anybody's talking to small business owners that that would be eligible for the Ontario Small Business Support Grant, we went through the process with a client last week. It's so easy to apply for. And we also recorded that call with them, so we would be able to share that once we've stripped out certain information. But it's super easy. I haven't touched base with them to see when they've got money, but what the ministry's saying is that there'll be money in their bank account in like 10 days. So it's quick as well. So I just wanted to say there's lots of information out there, and it's just a little bit overwhelming for business owners. They need some hand holding, and they need a hug right now. And we can't do that. So I have to hug them in another way.
Yeah.
Anyway, thanks for your time, Steve, and all your hard work.
Thanks for that point, Wendy. And I want to allude, I was saying to Steve that the Chamber and the EEC have partnered up to have a business hotline. Tian LaRocque, I think, is on the call right now too. So we really want to support businesses like we have, but even to, a bigger magnitude. I have a little bit of an idea that I have to ask my board about before I go ahead with it, that I thought of on the weekend. So stay tuned for that. But we're here for, like everybody else, we're here for our businesses and our community. We want to make sure that at the end of the day, it's going to be a very strong community. So I think Nicole had her hand up first, and then I'll go to Tori and then Darren. Nicole, did you want to unmute yourself or no? Okay, no problem. Okay, go ahead, Tori, with your question.
Thank you very much, Pamela. First, I want to say thanks to the Chamber for hosting today and everybody here who is contributing to this important discussion. Thanks to Minister Clark for the support programs that the government's been putting out for small business. Programs are certainly helpful and key to the survival of our many small businesses while we weather this next wave of COVID. I have found personally that the programs are very easy to apply for, and the infusion of cash and the response time has been super, super quick. So thank you, Minister Clark, and the entire government for being well prepared for this second closure. Having said that, as a small business owner, I'd much rather be working and getting back behind my salon chair as quick as possible. So last June, the government embraced a regional approach to reopening. And I think my question is going to be pretty simple. When can we expect that regional approach to begin again? And what will it look like? Pre-extension of the Emergency Act, it was said that the North would open first, and then it would be East, West, and then followed by Toronto. Will it look like that still, Minister? And when can we expect that to begin? Thank you.
I think it's a great question, Tori. I think we did that with schools, where schools in the north opened, then schools in those green zones, and now it was opened up even further to get to that 18 out of 34 health units. And although the decision hasn't been made by the health table and presented to cabinet. I go back to what I said earlier. It's certainly my hope, and I'll continue to advocate that they look at the data in ridings like ours that are presently green and help inform those statistics with whatever decision is recommended to cabinet. So, I think you'll see something indicated earlier. I don't think we're going to wait until February 10th to announce it. But I think this week is going to be critical in reviewing the data and making those decisions moving forward. So I agree with you, although I don't give you any business. I think I think the sooner we get back to a more normal situation around that framework that we had prior to Boxing Day, the better off we're going to be.
Okay, go ahead, Darren, if you wanted to ask a question.
Yeah, so another question. I'll just echo both comments that I have a client who applied for the Ontario Small Business Grant. She said it took about 5 minutes and she had money in 72 hours. So congratulations, that's awesome. I think the biggest challenge though is, as you said, we've got 212 people from Leeds, is most businesses have applied for other grants and find them very, maybe too cumbersome. And, I've talked to some people, oh my goodness, I've spent hours on this. Well, if you're spending hours for 1,000, they're probably thinking I'll spend weeks to get 10 or 20,000. So we just got to get that word out to people that it's an easy process. And, if there are people who need help through the process, we need to continue to help them and work on that. So anyways, like I say, good job on getting that rolled out. Hopefully we can convince businesses in our area that it is an easy process and it happens fast.
Yeah, and thanks for that, Darren. And I see Ann Weir is now on my screen, so as people move in and out. And one of the great success stories in our riding is the digital service squads that was announced in Spencerville, and that group has really done a real great job. I know that the ministry reached out to me, and that's why we sent out the release last week, because our riding is really, so here's a compare and contrast where our numbers might be low on some of those business support programs. Our numbers are a lot higher on that digital conversion to that online platform, and it's a direct result of the work of people like Ann and the group that's on the ground helping businesses right across the riding. So I wanted to give a shout out to that program, because it really is it really has been one of the shining stars for our riding in terms of business support.
Perfect. So I see that Nick has his hand up to ask a question or a comment, and then I think Ann had her hand up too.
Yes, thank you, Pamela, and thank you for the Chamber for hosting this meeting today. And thank you, Minister Clark, for everything you do for the riding and what you do for the hospital. So we certainly really appreciate that. I know there's been a lot of sacrifices across the region, and we're seeing exceptionally low rates of COVID, and obviously that has an impact on the hospital. So I want to thank the community for everything they've done for us and for our families, our neighbors, and our friends that work at the hospital. One thing that we're committed to at the Brockville General Hospital is to look locally where we can purchase goods. We will do that, and we're going to take a closer look on our spent expenditures, and anything we can do to shop locally, we will do that. So that's our commitment to the region.
That's awesome, Nick. Thank you, and thank you for your comment. And Weir, did you have a question?
Just a follow-up to Minister Clark's, how can we support? And it's really great to hear that businesses are having great success with the Ontario Small Business Grant. And what I'd like to offer then is to perhaps do some video testimonials, and let's get it out on social media locally. And I'm happy to coordinate that at the counties. We can do it in promotion with our e-newsletter, or do something along that line. So If there are companies that are willing to do that, a testimonial video, I'm more than glad to put some efforts behind that to get that out, because if there's money out there, I'd rather see it coming to businesses in this region. And so just like with the digital squads, we were kind of making sure we covered all our communities and had access for them, because it's such an important tool going forward for them to be online and to have a digital footprint. So I see this as just as essential as well. So I put that out as an offer to coordinate for the region, and I can bring that forward in another meeting this afternoon. Thanks.
That's fabulous. And I look forward to that meeting this afternoon. So Anne has put a working group together right from the beginning of COVID and has been amazing and very supportive group with lots of businesses and organizations on. So appreciate that, Anne. Now we're coming to the end. I don't want to use up too much. We've been on the call, and Steve, I'm sure, is very, very busy man. I just wanted to ask Ron. Ron is on the call if he had any questions before we close out.
Yeah, I guess just picking up, I guess, on Mr. Deschamps' comment about the timing of the reopening. I think Mayor Baker, in particular here in Brockville, has repeated frequently that, you know, he was hopeful that maybe even before that February 11th deadline, that some consideration might be given to municipalities or areas where the numbers are comparatively low. And, you know, we're 10 days away from that February 11th date, but does it sound like now that nothing's going to happen anywhere in terms of reopening until that February 11th timeline?
You know, again, any change before the 10th would be based on recommendation from the Chief Medical Officer of Health. I've got no information from him indicating that the order is going to be lifted before the 10th. So, you know, I think that, you know, we saw with the schools, you know, there was a group from, you know, I watched the Sick Kids CEO the other day talk about the reason, you know, for on a mental health basis to get kids back in the classroom. And it's shown that we had great protocols and it was safe to do so. You know, again, I'm going to continue to present to the Chief Medical Officer data from our riding. But I've got no information at this time whether the Chief Medical Officer will make any determination prior to the 10th. And that's why, you know, I answered Tori's question the way I did, because, you know, I think we have to sensitize people that it's a 28-day decision, and that means it's 28 days.
Okay. Just one last thing. We just learned, I guess, over the weekend of another supply issue with vaccine. I forget which company it was. And I think Premier Ford was urging the federal government to fast track the green lighting of, I think, Johnson & Johnson or other vaccines. Just from your position with access to the health table, any indication of how this latest supply issue might affect things on the ground, and especially here in this riding where, you know, there was that February 5th date for getting through the first phase that Dr. Stewart was confident in meeting. Any idea how this might affect things further in the weeks ahead?
Well, I hope that the federal government does deal with the vaccine challenges that they've had, and I don't think it's just Premier Ford. I think it's every province and territory are basically saying the same thing. You know, I'm going to remain optimistic that the federal government will be able to get a supply of the vaccine, and once we get the supply, you know, we've got a good plan to make sure that it happens and to make sure it gets distributed. And locally, Dr. Stewart, you know, as I said earlier, she's taken our 4-point plan and made it into a 6-point plan. But it's regardless of how many points, if the supply is there, we'll get needles in arms, no question.
All right, thank you.
Perfect. So in closing, it's always a pleasure, Minister Clark, having you on our yearly updates. And I'm sure it's just not yearly that we speak more than that, but to our membership. And also to my partners and sponsors today, like I said, the Small Business, Leeds Grenville Small Business Enterprise Center and Allstate. Angie Hay could not be here today. Usually she's the one that closes out our meeting, but she sends her regrets to Minister Clark that she could not be here, but I'm sure she'll be watching the video afterwards. A couple of events that we have coming up in February. We don't have the date locked down, but it's RTO 9 Zoom call, and it's the Tourism Adaptation Funds. So we'll be putting that together for that sector in the hospitality and retail restaurants, but that will be coming in February. March 3rd at 9 o'clock, we have Pierre Collereau, the Vice President, Research and Chief Economist from BDC, joining our membership at 9 o'clock on March 3rd. March 22nd is Mayor Baker's update. And then March 30th at 9 o'clock is our AGM. So where we will be doing it virtually this year. Last year we did it in-house, social distancing, and then half went golfing. So we're going to be doing it by Zoom. And we will not be doing the Lifetime Achievement Award at that particular time because we have not finished our 2020 long-term, our Lifetime Achievement Award. So we want to do that special award for 2 recipients for 2020 and 2021. So stay tuned for that information. And once again, Minister MacLeod, it's been a great pleasure and very informative. And we really, really appreciate you taking the time to spend with us this morning.
Thanks, Pam. I just want to thank again the Chamber for your advocacy. I want to thank you for giving me this opportunity. And I also want to thank, I'm very honored that that we have such loyal sponsors for my event every year. So to give Angie my regards, and also to thank to Jeanette and Wendy. You guys, we're always a team at these events, and I appreciate their annual sponsorship. So they're all doing a great job. So as is everyone on this call. Thank you again.
Thank
Thank
you.
you. Thank you so much. Everybody have a wonderful day and stay safe.
Thank you.